But one guy that saw a lot of this happening and how the LGBTQ plus agenda would be used to divide people as a wedge, as a way also to criminalize Christianity, is apparently the Council on Foreign Relations is upset with folks in Africa living out their Christian worldview, and then the Christian law firms in America that are helping them. One guy that saw this coming years ago is Matt Staver, the founder and chairman of the board of the Liberty Council, lc.org. Matt, thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate your being with us.
Thanks. Good to be with you, Brandon.
You saw a lot of this coming with what's going on with the Methodist group and their conference, and now we see the Council on Foreign Relations is, I guess, monitoring how the Africans are standing firm with their Christian worldview. American legal law firms are working with them. The Council on Foreign Relations, I guess, has Christianity on their target list, apparently.
Yeah, they do. If you look at anything that is repressive throughout our human history, it always targets people of faith, particularly the church in modern times over the last 2,000 years, because the church is the bulwark of freedom. Our faith and our values really come from our relationship with the Lord, our Judeo-Christian worldview, and that is our foundation of freedom. That is always an antithesis against tyranny. So these globalists, whether it's the Council of Foreign Relations, the World Health Organization, whether it's George Soros, Gates, whatever it might be, that want to assert global authority and repress people's freedom for the government to become the ultimate God, if you will. The antithesis of that is the church, is people of faith. That's why they want to target them. We always said years ago that there is a zero-sum game when it comes to the LGBTQ agenda. And what I mean by that is there's no compromise there, not because people of goodwill don't want to compromise, but because the LGBT agenda don't want to compromise. They don't want anything that competes with them. They want not only their agenda, but they also want anyone who is a dissenter not just to remain silent, but to become a cheerleader. And if you're not a cheerleader for them, it's not good enough just to remain silent. It's not good enough just to, quote, live and let live, if you will. They want you to adopt their full-blown agenda and become a cheerleader for them. And so that radicalism knows no ends. It is destructive, and it becomes nonsensical, like what we just saw with the Methodists. Just that they all identify them. What happens? I guess could you identify yourself as a minor? When you're, 55 years old, I guess you could. And that particular crowd of people that reality doesn't mean anything to. But when we believe that there is an objective reality, that goes against the Council of Foreign Relations, the WHO, the globalists. It goes against this nonsensical video that you just showed that is sad that it's actually happening within the Methodist organization. Like the Boy Scouts, the Methodists will become irrelevant when they've crossed that line where they have become basically used by and consumed by and frankly destroyed by the agenda that they espouse.
Very well said. Let's switch to another topic that's dear to your heart as someone who's gone to Israel many times. We now tonight have the pro-Hamas, Palestinian protesters breaking down the barriers, removing the barriers there in New York, getting up to the Met Gala, which I think includes a lot of liberal progressives that would probably be on their side. So I don't know why they're protesting them, but it's gotten a little rough tonight. All right, I'll hold it there just because I don't know what language might be coming, but you guys get the idea. So, Matt, this is exploding everywhere, as we know. You and I have been talking about anti-Semitism. We've been talking about hate crime laws. You and I are very concerned that crises will be generated, allowed to fester, to then, after they create the crisis, offer up a solution. In my book, 2015, The Coming Religious Reich, I talk about legislation that Tony Blair was working on over in Europe that would criminalize anyone that doubted the Holocaust. And some Jewish leaders and rabbis stepped forward and said, look, we don't like Holocaust deniers. Come on. But we better be careful because that can be a double-edged sword. And pretty soon we will have our religion censored or controlled. So let us just get out there in the arena of ideas and compete with these Holocaust deniers. But that's something that Tony Blair was pushing some time ago. And now we saw legislation being pushed last week, the Antisemitism Act. I don't know how you feel about it because we don't rehearse these shows, but my philosophy and thought is, look, we've got laws in the books already to deal with terroristic threats, to deal with assault, to deal with trespass, to deal with kidnapping. We have all kinds of laws in the books. And yet, according to the legislation, I've seen it, I've showed it on the screen, they're going to hold to the International Holocaust Alliance standards, which, of course, to them, criticizing the Jews for the crucifixion can be anti-Semitic. Now, in this broadcast, we went to Romans 3, we went to Romans 8, we've gone to the book of Matthew. Who crucified Christ? The Jews, the Romans, and everybody on the planet that's ever lived who has sinned. Our sin sent Christ to the cross. We know that. So it should not be used in fact, the Bible says that God saw it fit for his son to become the propitiation for sin, that God bruised him for our sins. He laid down his life willingly as a ransom. So with that all said, I'm like, wait a minute, we have enough laws in the books. I'm concerned this legislation may be put up by well-meaning people, but also I think promoted by people that aren't thinking or maybe are trying to set a trap and divide Christians and Jews. And I'm seeing it used on social media since last week to go after Jews, to say this is who controls America. Congress is controlled by the Jews, and now they're going to criminalize Christianity. So I don't think we need such laws because I think we already have enough laws on the books to deal with these things. What says the attorney?
Well, bad facts, they say, make bad law. And sometimes when you have bad facts, people react to it. And out of those bad facts, this knee-jerk reaction creates bad law. I think that's, in fact, what we may be considering here. Look, you and I are very much opposed to anti-Semitism. In fact, Liberty Counsel today and then tomorrow and then Wednesday, we are doing a three-part series on who's behind these protests on college campuses. And we detail shocking information that is behind this. Millions of dollars are funding this anti-Semitism. It's an orchestrated, well-coordinated event, primarily by two major funders, but others as well. And they're funneling their money through various organizations. And they're the ones that are behind all these campus riots. It's not student-led. There's students involved. But many of these are not students, but certainly the money behind it is coming from outside sources. And it is really targeted at the Jews and it's targeted at Israel. A hatred for the Jews and a hatred against Israel. You know, in Columbia right now, they just announced that they're canceling their graduation, their main graduation. But, you know, Columbia should have done what University of Florida did. They arrested 6 protesters. They said, look, this is not a babysitting place for protesters. They know the rules. They broke them. They will be punished for them. They are arrested. They're taken off campus, and they're going to be suspended from campus for 3 years. Done. The protests are over. No more protest at the University of Florida. Just 6 people. That's all it took. Columbia University ought to take a note from that. And some of these other universities like UCLA. That's what could do the job. And they already have laws in place. They have laws, for example, and the students ought to be bringing these complaints against these universities. They have laws where these universities not only have to report sexual abuse, sexual assaults, but also violence. These universities have federal laws that they have to comply with to make their campus a place where they're not going to be abused. They're not going to have this Jewish girl like over in UC Berkeley is beat to death and now beat unconscious, so she doesn't even recognize her parents when she goes to the hospital. So that has to end. This is violent, and it needs to end. So we're very, very much opposed to this anti-Semitism. Now, this particular Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, that's kind of like the reaction to it that overwhelmingly passed in the House. But the problem with it is it's adopting the International Holocaust Remembrance Group's definition of anti-Semitism. The IHRA's working definition of anti-Semitism is, quote, a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. And then also it goes on to say that it encompasses, quote, the targeting of the state of Israel conceived as a Jewish collectivity. My problem with this Anti-Semitism Awareness Act is not that these people are, a lot of people are well-meaning. They are just like you and me. They don't want anti-Semitism. They want to do something. But I don't think this is the way to do it, because the implications of this are significant from a First Amendment free speech perspective.
Absolutely.
There are laws on the books. Some of the universities have used those laws on the books, and they've crushed the riots, and they're not there. Columbia, UCLA, they have not. They have allowed these to fester. This has caused intimidation to Jewish people and others, caused cancellation of classes, virtual learning, and even cancellation of graduation. That's not the way to do it. Use the laws that are in existence, stop the violence. This is not First Amendment protected speech, and protect legitimate free speech. The Anti-Semitism Awareness Act has a good intention, but I think it can have a problematic application because of this very broad definition of anti-Semitism. So I am not in favor of this law because of its significant First Amendment issues that it raises.
I figured we'd be in agreement. I need to let you go, but I want to point to this real quick and have a comment. Take a look at this at lc.org tonight. Biden just announced his plan regarding the WHO. What's the latest before we let you go on this, Matt?
Oh, well, he's actually come out now and posted on the White House website what his plans are for the WHO, and that is to sign a new pandemic treaty and the amendments to the international health regulations. I will say, however, there's some momentum that's building. We now have 49 Republican senators, all the senators signing a letter last week. We just had to Biden protesting the WHO. We just had one of the members of Congress today during a hearing bring up the WHO. We've got movement on the House. We have movement that's taking place with a number of attorneys general. We'll talk about that maybe when that breaks, hopefully later this week, where they're going to come together and have a collective pushback. And believe it or not, we have 161 NGOs. These are very liberal NGOs, and they are opposing the WHO vote. Now, they are in favor of the WHO. They like the WHO. They want it to go further. But they're really upset that the WHO has been ramrodding this down everybody's throats without any input. So we have the same objective, to derail the May 27 meeting. They have a different ultimate objective, to expand the WHO, but at least for this May meeting, we need to stop the vote, and Congress needs to act. So there is global momentum, there is domestic momentum, and we just need to keep the pressure on and make sure that Congress passes H.R. 1425 and S. 444. That's the companion bill, and that would require that Biden has to submit any international agreement with the WHO to the U.S. Senate for a 2/3 majority vote. He'll never get that, but that's what the bill is that we're wanting to pass and send a message to this administration.
Absolutely. Look at that, folks. lc.org if you want to get the newsletter that I get on these vital issues. Liberty Counsel member Matt, just a couple years ago, fought a case at the U.S. Supreme Court, as he's done many. He won that one on religious liberty 9-0. So again, Liberty Counsel, lc.org, lc.org. Thank you for your patience with us tonight, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be with you, Brandon.
You too. Matt Staver checking in tonight, folks. His patience was, I forgot to write down that he was coming on, so I had to quickly go to him. So there you go. So I forgot. I booked it on Friday afternoon. I forgot to write it down. Are you getting to that age where you forget if you don't write things down? I used to be able to go without writing anything down. People would say, do you write all this down? Like, no, I don't have to write it all down. I remember it. Not so much anymore. I have to write it all down or I forget. Too much going on. So anyway, he was very patient tonight. Thanks for that, Matt.